Namaskar. Welcome to day 2 of Arth, a culture fest co-powered by Greenply, India's first zero-emission plywood, Macho hint, and parachute advanced goal with a special partner, Protinex. Ladies and gentlemen, as we salute 75 years of India's independence, celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, we bring you another edition of Arth, where you tend to rediscover, revisit, re-explore, and reconnect with your roots. I'd like to thank all our friends and associates to begin with. Channel partners Zee News, channel partners Zee Hindustan, Zee TV, and TV, Zee Marathi, Zee Bangla, Zee Punjabi, Zee Ganga, Zee Bioscope, Zee Yuva, Zee Anmol Cinema, Zee Classic, Zee Cinema HD, and Pictures HD, Zing, Zee Zest, Zee Cafe, and Priv HD and Explore HD. Culture partner Incredible India, radio partner Red FM, cine movie partner UFO Movies, transit partner Cashew Drive, gifting partner Biyogi, college outreach partner Half Ticket Entertainment, publishing partner HarperCollins India and Penguin India, entertainment partner Zplex, digital outreach partners IMS Ghaziabad, History of Modern India, WhatsApp Live, India Lost and Found, Pen of Dharma, community partner Maitri Ray Associates, and Lions Club. Ladies and gentlemen, we begin this morning's edition with a very important, as we say, we look inwards in Arth. We look into a very important aspect of religion, and we talk about whether we have different sides of the same coin when we talk about Hinduism and Hindutva. We have very, very eminent panelists with us, taking you through this riveting discussion that will happen to kickstart the morning. We would like to invite Ram Madhav ji, who's an Indian politician, author, and thinker. He's also served as the former National General Secretary of the Bharatiya Janata Party. He's a member of the Board of Governors of India Foundation, a New Delhi-based think tank. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Ram Madhav ji on stage. Thank you very much. Now I would like to invite Mr. Pavan Varma, who is the National Vice President of the All India Trinamool Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Pavan Varma. The onlooker or the moderator for this morning is Shefali Vaidya, who is an award-winning author, newspaper columnist, and social media influencer. May I welcome Ms. Shefali Vaidya on stage. And I leave you with an invigorating panel to discuss religion and look inwards in Arth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and it's a great honor to moderate this discussion between Pavan Kumar Varma ji and Ram Madhav ji on Hinduism and Hindutva. Are they the same? Are they different? And what do they really mean? That is something that we need to talk about. You know, recently the words Hinduism and Hindutva have acquired a new political flavor with politicians from all political parties talking about it. And they are pitting it as two forces which are inimical to each other, which are against each other, and the more simplistic version, which the detractors of the word Hindutva say, is that they reduce it to the very simplistic binary that says Hinduism good, Hindutva bad. But the defenders of Hindutva say that Hindutva is Hinduism that resists. That is one of the shortest, pithiest definitions of Hindutva that I have read. But I would like to know from both these distinguished gentlemen is what is their understanding of Hinduism, Hindutva, and how do these two forces relate to each other? Are they the same? Are they different? And if they are different, are they in a fight with each other? Are they complementing each other? What is Hinduism and what is Hindutva? And how do they sort of relate to each other? I'll start this discussion with Pavanji because his latest book talks about Hindutva and Hinduism in detail. And also he's an interesting person in the sense that he talks about Hinduism and Hindutva after having an understanding of the scriptures. But normally, we see that people who are talking about Hinduism and Hindutva are basically one MP from Kerala who thinks he knows everything, and another MP from Kerala who really knows nothing. So Pavanji is actually an interesting person in the sense that in his book, in the first 4 or 5 chapters of his book, he reads like an ideologue of the RSS. Really. Because he talks about how Hinduism has been constantly demeaned and devalued, and how India has been having asymmetric secularism, and that is why you see the resurgence of this political ideology called Hindutva. So I would like to ask Pavanji, what is your definition of Hinduism, Hindutva, and how do these forces relate to each other?
Thank you, Shefali. And let me say, what a great pleasure it is to be on this platform of Arth once again with you and Madhav ji. You've asked an important question. To my mind, Hinduism is one of those remarkable, grand, profound, nuanced, sensitive Sanatan dharmas, which is known for its ability to overarch black and white polarities in order to persist with its quest for truth, and in the process it has survived precisely because of its eclectic, open, tolerant and accommodating while not being a passive religion. Why I say this? See, I can't give you a lecture, and I'll be brief in my reply, on Hinduism, but one of its outstanding features is the Mahavakya of the Rig Veda, Ekam Satya Vipraha Bahuda Vadanti. The truth is one, wise people call it by different names. It's not an Abrahamic faith. Again, one of the Mahavakyas is Ano Bhadraha Kritavo Yantu Vishvata. Let good thoughts flow to me from all directions. Not that this is right and that is wrong in every respect for all time in totality. In fact, this is a religion which at a time when people refused to look beyond their tribe or their community had the audacity of thought to say, Udara Charitanam Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. For the big-hearted, the entire world is your family. We have a situation where the 3 foundational texts of Hinduism, the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita, are all dialogues, where there is not a fiat, but an invitation to reflective dialogue, and that is the tensile strength of Hinduism. Now, we have not one system of philosophy, but we have 6 systems of philosophy, each of which, Shefali, can almost be called atheist, because they are not talking of deity or divinity, they are talking about what the ultimate truth can be behind the bewildering plurality of this cosmos. So therefore, if this is the grandeur of Hinduism, my interpretation of Hindutva is that so long as it is the systemic essence of Hinduism, I have no problem with that word. But its manifestation as political Hindutva often makes me believe that it is for short-term goals militating against the very spirit and profundity of Hinduism and doing great damage to Hindus themselves. If I have time, otherwise I will intervene later, I will give you examples of the manifestations of political Hindutva.
We'll talk about that later. Ram Madhavji, it's interesting. In your book, The Hindutva Paradigm, you have taken Deen Dayal Upadhyay's philosophy of integral humanism and you've talked about Hindutva in the broader context, and you have said that Hinduism is actually narrower. It is, I mean, I'm rephrasing, paraphrasing. It is actually the religious part of Hindutva, while Hindutva is the essence of being Hindu. So it is what Pavan Varma ji has just now said about Upanishadic philosophy, about the culture, about the broadness of thought, about the cultural ethos, about the civilizational ethos, is actually Hindutva. And Hinduism is your temple going, your, the religious part of it. So Hindutva is broader and Hinduism is a part of that. Is that what your understanding of Hinduism and Hindutva is?
Thank you, Shefali. Firstly, this newfound differentiation between these two words, Hindutva and Hinduism, is in a way a great journey for many eminent intellectuals, including those who talked about the wise men of Kerala or unwise men of Kerala, but also many real intellectuals like Mr. Pavan Varma. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, for them even Hinduism was communal. Not necessarily probably for Pavan Varma, but those who talked about it, they used to brand anybody talking anything in terms of Hindu to be a communal person. It was communalism. Earlier it was Hitlerian. After that it was fascism. Then communalism. Then suddenly it is Hindutva. So while they admit Hinduism as great, I say they traveled a long way. Out of conviction for many, out of political expediency for some from Kerala. But then they have tried to find a new vocabulary to again say the same thing. Your Hindutva is communal. Our Hinduism is, very liberal, very inclusive. The description that Mr. Pavan Varma gave, nobody can dispute about Hinduism. But Pavan Varma ji also knows that Hinduism doesn't fit into one of his descriptions alone. I mean, he quoted three vakyas. I can quote the fourth vakya and say, this is also Hinduism. Agratha chaturo vedan, prushtata sashram dhanuhu, idam brahmyam idam kshatram shapadam sharadapi. That is also Hinduism. We have the great knowledge of Vedas in the forefront, but behind them an arrow ready to be released. We have both the intellectual prowess as well as the power to protect that intellectual strength. That is Hindutva. So Hindutva, Hinduism, whichever name you call it by, it denotes that same thing, the ancient wisdom of this country. Now, you gave a very interesting definition to it. Hindutva is Hinduism in resistance. I say Hinduism in action probably. When you put it in action, ism, we have a problem with that word ism, because ism is a very structured, very definite set of certain principles. Capitalism, communism, these are all isms. They are set of specific rules. Hinduism defies any such specific straitjacketing. It is so very open, so very inclusive that it cannot be called an ism. If you don't call it an ism, what do you call it? So we say, you call it Hinduness. That Hinduness is what we say Hindutva. Hindutva is all that Mr. Pavan Varma is saying, but much more than that. So this distinction, this discrimination between these two words is very artificial. It is suiting some, probably their politics, but for some, their grudging acknowledgement that yes, after all, Hinduism is great, this culture of the land is great, we must one day accept it, appreciate it. We should not be stuck in the debate of 1940s and 1950s, even the debate of Constituent Assembly and later. So that realization is what is resulting in appreciation. Genuinely, grudgingly, or out of political expediency. For us, these two are no different. And I never say that Hinduism is meaner and Hindutva is liberal. I say these two words, actually don't mean anything different. They both represent the same spirit.
So the MP from Kerala, who knows everything, had shared a meme on Twitter some days ago, and I'm quoting it because that is the meme that's not just shared by him, but that is the meme that's shared by everybody, to demonize this word called Hindutva and to take out this artificial distinction between Hindu and Hinduism and Hindutva. And I'd like to quote from it, because these are the arguments that are used mostly on TV debates these days by people who have no understanding of the word. And they say, they first start with the opening statement that Hindutva was a word that's coined by Veer Savarkar. It was not. It was coined by a gentleman called Chandranath Basu first. But Veer Savarkar wrote a book called Essentials of Hindutva, and he did try to define Hindutva as a philosophy. But be that as may, let me read from this meme, which says, Hinduism is a great union of various Indian cultures and traditions with diverse roots and no founder. And they say that Hindutva is a homogeneous racial territorial category propagated by Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, which is where there comes the first lie. Then the second lie says, Hinduism is thousands of years old, one of the oldest practiced religions, spiritual paths, way of life in the world, which is true. And Hindutva was first proposed as a political idea in 1923 by Savarkar. It's not. It was first used by Chandranath Bose. Hinduism does not have one but many central texts, the Vedas, the Puranas, the Itihasas, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Yoga, Sankhya, Mimamsa, Vedanta, what basically Pavanji has said. And Hindutva has one central text, the political pamphlet Hindutva, Who is a Hindu, published in 1928. Hinduism pluralistic, Hindutva is monolithic, Hinduism is unique in its inclusiveness, Hindutva is exclusive, Hinduism is synonymous with secularism, and practitioners of Hindutva oppose the traditional secular Hindu way of life, is the meme that's doing the round. I quoted it to let people know what kind of logic is usually used by the opponents of the word Hindutva and who are trying to distinguish between Hinduism and Hindutva. Now my question to Pavanji here is that when they are saying that Hindutva is bad because it is an exclusivist philosophy which has only one central text and which is not inclusive, and basically they are saying that Hindutva is Abrahamic and Hinduism, according to them, is not. So are they saying that Abrahamism is bad? Are they saying that having one central text and excluding other people is a bad philosophy? But if they are saying that, then why are they not applying it to Abrahamic text? Why are they not talking about this in the context of Islam and Christianity? Why only use this argument to demonize Hindutva?
Thank you, Shefali. I listened to Ram Madhavji very carefully. And I respect what he says. Let me say, I am a proud Hindu, and I believe a consequence of that is that I may not be conforming to some of the tenets of Abrahamic faiths, but I must and I will and I genuinely desire to respect all faiths, sarv dharm sambhav. So if there is something to be criticized in any religion or religious practice or custom, the touchstone for it need not necessarily be to pit one religion against another, but a viewpoint of desirable change. Now, as far as the question of Hinduism and Hindutva is concerned, let me give to you, to concretize this debate, 3 actions, for instance, which have been recently carried out in the name of Hindutva. There is a studio in Bhopal where a serial was being shot called Ashram. A bunch of lumpen elements in saffron scarves stormed the studio, vandalized it, in the claim that, falsely, that this is hurting religious sentiment. They took the law into their own hands. They were averse to dialogue on the subject. They did not seek to inquire into the actual content of what was being made. They took power in their hands and vandalized it. And amazingly, the Home Minister of the state seemed to endorse what they did, and those who did it claimed to do it in the name of Hindutva. Secondly, there was recently an ad campaign which used some Urdu words on the occasion of Diwali. You had a friend of mine, young friend of mine, a fiery MP from Karnataka, who carried out a campaign to say that this is an insult to Hindus, and he claimed to do it in the name of fostering or propagating Hindutva.
Did he say that?
There are his tweets, you can read them.
Yeah, did he say
He
that
said
I'm doing it in the name
No,
of
no,
Hindutva?
he claimed to be acting in the name of Hindutva as again, because you used the word Hindutva that resists. Now this is a action
No,
against.
I'm asking you. You said he claimed. I'm asking you. Did he say that? Did he say that I'm doing it in the name of Hindutva?
If he was not even doing it in the name of Hindutva, Shefali, then I think it is a plain and simple case of the violation of every tenet that we hope to preserve in our constitution, if there was no ideology also backing it. Therefore, a third example, let me give you. Some women were beaten up recently, some years ago, who had gone into a cafe or in the evening by people, by a lumpen crowd that claimed to be inspired by Hindutva, and they said these women are behaving in manners which are not in accordance with their misogynist and patriarchal views of what chaste Hindu women should do. Fourthly, there have been cases of cattle, I'm not exaggerating them, but to kill a person for a mistake that is entirely disputed and chant Jai Shri Ram and put it out in a video in the name of Hinduism that resists. Therefore, I sometimes feel that the BJP, even if I grant to them good intentions, has outsourced the practice of this Hinduism that resists to the lowest common denominator of Hinduism itself. And we need to ask. Now, a fifth example.
So you said only 3 examples. I
No,
need
but
to
I'm-
move on.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I'll stop.
Can I take a couple of minutes?
Ram
Now, the
Madhavji,
problem-
Ram Madhavji, just 1 second. I just want to have a quick one-sentence sort of bridging between these two. Sir, you are quoting incidents, but that is basically cherry-picking incidents. There are thousands of incidents happening.
Sorry,
Please listen me
They're
out.
not cherry picking. They all
Please listen to me.
cumulatively point to a template
So
of
my-
Hinduism that resists in what manner?
So my question to you, sir, is that we live in a so-called secular country where the judiciary actually gives a judgment in a Hindu matter of worship about Sabrimala and women's right to enter. And there it quotes the secular laws and says that no matter what the religious philosophy says, no matter what the religious philosophy that people believe in, but this is not acceptable according to the secular laws of the land. So that is why we have allowed women to enter Sabrimala. Hindu religious sentiments be damned. Okay? But the same court, when it is listening to arguments on triple talaq, and even right now when you're talking about hijab, what are the arguments that are used to foster it? That this is what the hadith says, this is what the sharia says, this is what the religious scripture says. Do you not see the hypocrisy in this? And do you not see what is happening, the incidents that you quoted? Do you not see that as somewhere the ground cell of all these cumulative actions that have been happening in the past 70 years? I'll come back to you. I'm sorry. I'll just...
Let me quickly reply because you asked me a question. First of all, Shefali, I take on board that there have been many actions which I believe have been contrary to what Hindus legitimately believe are their interests, and they have very often been taken in the past in the name of secularism to perpetuate minority vote bank politics. I have conceded this, I have written at length on this. All I am saying is that even if there is anger against this, should it in the name of political Hindutva take forms which are the lumpenization of Hinduism? I do not defend the hijab as a symbol of the empowerment of women. At the same time, I want to say, and this is what we were discussing before this program started, I think liberal opinion, Hindu opinion, any opinion in this country cannot use scriptural injunction for the continued sartorial enslavement of women. I'm giving an example of the hijab. So I'm against it. But suppose there was a matter being negotiated within Hinduism on the practice of a particular custom. And while it is being negotiated, Muslim men came and surrounded the negotiation shouting Allahu Akbar. Would it facilitate? Would it not be an imposition unwarranted? Which is what happened when this matter was polarized and politicized.
Fair enough,
so we need to be a sane society. Hinduism cannot be allowed in the name of the anger that, according to you, is among Hindus for wrongful neglect of the community to descend to the lowest common denominators.
Ram Madhavji, first of all, do you agree to this point that people keep using political Hindutva? Is there such a word? And is Hindutva only political? And what is your opinion about what Shri Pavan Varma said?
No, this is an extension of that futile effort to create an artificial distinction between Hinduism and Hindutva. Hinduism is very liberal. Hindutva is, lumpenization, the word that was used. Here is Hindutva movement today at the center stage of national life, with so much support of the entire country, and people who do not enjoy 1% of the popular support call as lumpens. The entire movement. Not just saying that, okay, I am the first one to stand up with Mr. Pavan Varma, opposing any vandalization any point in time. But remember, I am never going to stand with him when he says, you must take any abuse of your sentiments just lying down. Nobody takes.
Nor
the
am
entire
I.
war. No. So please don't dismiss sentiments. You don't say that in the name of sentiment you are doing everything. What has that leader you talked about done? He has done a campaign. He did not like a particular ad. Do you mean to say he doesn't have that right? So Hindu, if you are a Hindu, if you happen to be in a Hindu party, you should shut up. Whatever happens in the country. If he promotes violence, if he says it is you go and kill this person, attack that person, I will stand with you. Don't do that. If he says in the name of Hindutva, I am saying that you should be sent out of the country. Some people say that. I am not going to stand by them. But Mr. Pavan Varma, I remember, in the whole epics that you talked about, the wars that you talked about, they were waged merely on sentiments, remember. One Draupadi's humiliation had led to that big war. You know history very well. You know Mahabharata very well. There were offer of 5 villages that could have prevented that war. Why did that war not happen? Not stop? See, sentiments don't dismiss. Everybody has to respect the sentiments. Now comes the question. If somebody can do anything and nobody should react. Did Indian history, Hindu history not have great personalities who rejected the very fundamentals of Hinduism? Did Bhagavan Buddha not say that I don't believe in the existence of God? Was it not a rebellion against Hinduism? Was it not a protest? Did we say he was lumpen? Don't use words very easily, very casually. Lumpenization. Where is lumpenization? These incidents happen. I tell you, there are respected parliament members from other communities who give such violent, provocative speeches. I have not seen people like you standing up and saying you are doing great injustice to Islam. They are not lumpens for you?
They are.
When did you say that? Sir? Did you say that Mr. Obaisi was a lumpen? We should not use these words so casually. You say that is lumpenization, you say incidents. But the entire movement to call lumpenization of Hindus, where is lumpenization? Where is that is not
I gave examples.
That is is not lumpenization.
I can add 3 more.
That is lumpenization.
No. What I'm trying to say, sir, is
irrespective of religion.
Okay,
that happens anywhere.
No, what I can say.
I need to intervene
quick
here.
rejoinder.
I need to intervene here and move on to the next question, which is, sir, 1 second. You will have your chance to do the rejoinder in the answer of the next question. This whole artificial distinction between Hinduism and Hindutva is a very recent not a recent phenomena, but using it as one against another is a very recent phenomena. But we don't have a very clear definition of either word. Even the Supreme Court of India, in its judgment, says that when we think of the Hindu religion, we find it difficult, if not impossible, to define Hindu religion or even adequately describe it. Unlike other religions in the world, the Hindu religion does not claim any one prophet, it does not worship any one god, it does not subscribe to any one dogma, it does not believe in any one philosophic concept, and it does not appear to satisfy the narrow traditional features of any religion. Therefore, it may be broadly be created as a way of life and nothing more. This was the famous judgment in 1966. But I'm going to quote another judgment, which was a three-judge bench headed by Justice Varma in the Ramesh Prabhu case, that in 1996 has used the words Hinduism and Hindutva as interchangeable. It says that the words Hinduism or Hindutva are not necessarily to be understood and construed narrowly, confined only to the strict Hindu religious practices unrelated to the culture and ethos of the people of India, depicting the way of life of the Indian people. And further, it uses and says that it is a fallacy and an error of law to proceed on the assumption that any reference to Hindutva or Hinduism in a speech makes it automatically a hate speech. It uses the words Hinduism or Hindutva to mean one and the same thing. This is the apex court in India, which cannot distinguish between Hinduism and Hindutva. So where does this new definition of Hinduism and Hindutva, where these are pitted as two forces, one against another, come into being, and how did it come into being?
Shefali ji, I said, and I think the Honorable Court also proceeded on this assumption that if Hindutva is the essence of the corpus of thought and practice in Hinduism, then Hindutva and Hinduism in some respects are interchangeable words. My point to you today is that far from being that, the manifestation or actions in the name of Hindutva today militate in some respects against the foundational principles of Hinduism. Ram Madhav ji took offense to my word of lumpenization. He said, everybody has a right to protest. Sir, as Hindus, both you and I, do we have the right, the insight to sit on judgment on what is the cause of protest? If I say Diwali Mubarak, and Mubarak is an Urdu word, you carry out a nationwide social media campaign against that. Then you say,
Why don't you run another campaign that Mubarak is valid? That is democracy. So in democracy, we should.
I'm sorry, sir. You must also go into the merits of what is being said in the name of so-called name of Hindutva by responsible members of parliament of the ruling party, which more often than not completely militates against what Hindus themselves believe. See, whatever it is to try to whip up Hinduism into a Wahhabi faith because Hinduism that resists is not necessarily the same as that Hinduism that conquers by its conquering eclecticism, but not a passive religion. I say fight for the causes where you have things being wrong. For instance, if you feel that Hinduism should not be the only religion for the wrong reasons where its places of worship are not under the control of the community itself, it's a cause worth fighting for. If you say that the Shah Bano judgment was done to appease a particular Muslim community and not reform personal law, as was done in the case of Hindus without touching other personal laws, I say fight. It's a right cause to fight. But Hinduism also teaches you Maryada. Today, in the name of Maryada Purushottam, what actions are being taken? And especially, if I may say this, Shefali ji, where women are concerned. There are chief ministers who, in the name of their interpretation of Hinduism, which largely now passes under the rubric of Hindutva, have commented on women wearing jeans. There have been protests against campaigns where women are not shown with a bindi. I say to you, the BJP should seriously introspect. I name a party with great respect because they all claim allegiance to the larger Sangh Parivar. They must introspect about the forces they are unleashing in the protection of Hinduism, who know the least about Hinduism and are completely prone to take the law into their own hands for the wrong reasons.
Sir, I just quoted a Supreme Court judgment which said that just talking about Hindutva or Hinduism in a speech does not automatically amount to hate speech. So if a MP in a parliament starts a campaign, you may think that his cause has no merit. But that merit is a very subjective word. It is according to you, and you have every right to do so. And I am saying this fully responsibly because I started a campaign for myself before Diwali saying that I will not buy anything from any brand that shows models without a bindi for their Diwali ads or anything festive or anything Hindu. And the campaign went on to become a nationwide success, and it was called No Bindi, No Business. I have every democratic right to do so.
And I have every democratic right to oppose it.
Fine, but you cannot sit in judgment and say that this is
From
wrong
my
or
point
this
of
is
view, I
lumpen.
can. From my point of view, I can. Just like you made the bindi the badge of Hindu women in accordance with your definition of what Hindu women should be according to your definition of Hinduism, I have the right to question it.
You cannot call it lumpen, and you cannot say that this is against Hinduism. I'm sorry.
I think it is because Hinduism
Anyway.
allows for that scope of non-conformity. If you try to impose in Hinduism a conformity from a pulpit designed by people who say, I know what Hinduism is and you must
But aren't
conform
you
to
doing
it."
that?
No,
Aren't you doing
I
that?
say let women decide.
No, aren't
I
you
say
also
let
sitting
women
in
decide.
judgment?
No,
Aren't
so I
you
say-
sitting in judgment? Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be a moderator, but sometimes I get carried away. Ram Madhavji, sorry, this should have been your way,
No,
your stage.
I would say not necessarily the merit argument of Mr. Pavan Varma. I don't think the merit argument has any merit because who will decide which argument has merit? The Hindus will decide, and they are deciding. And this whole discourse about Hindutva, Hinduism, those who are championing a distinction between the two, people are what they are doing to those your famous MPs from Kerala and all, we all know. So merit is not the real argument. But I still see a merit in what he's saying, that can we straitjacket Hinduism into any few externals? On that, I have my view. I may not fully agree with Shefali's campaign that no bindu, no bindi, no Hinduism. No bindi, no business. But bindi is Hinduism may be a problematic proposition because in India, especially in North India, in Punjab and all, there is no such practice. Until marriage, they don't practice that. So there can be one campaign by one group, fair enough. And there can be many in Hinduism which may not confer to that kind of a propaganda. So that is the liberal, thing about Hinduism. But her point is again valid. When you say that such campaign is tantamount to indulging in lumpen activity, that is where we have the problem. I mean, if you are a Hindu, you have no right to express your sentiments. That is Hinduism. If you express your sentiments, you become Hindutva. Now, even in Savarkar's case, it's a gross misunderstanding of his Hindutva. What does Hindutva book, the very cover page says? Asindhu Sindhu Paryanta, Yasya Bharata Bhumika, Pitrubhu Punya Bhuschaiva, Savai Hinduriti Smrutaha. Those who consider this land from Himalayas to the Indian Ocean as their Pitru Bhumi, fatherland. He did not even use the word motherland. We all call it Bharat Mata. He used the very European concept of fatherland. Those who consider it as fatherland and Punya Bhumi, sacred land, they are all Hindus. How come Hindutva is discriminatory against other religions? How can it be treated as something very anti-Muslim and anti-Christian? Great injustice has been done to Savarkar also, irrespective of who invented that word Hindutva. But again, the point here is, we are all coming to that one agreement that after all, Hinduism or Hindutva, both are very liberal, very broad-based, very inclusive. Pavan Varma ji can have his own definition, I can have my own definition, but both can pass it off in the name of Hinduism or Hindutva. That is Hindutva. Let's accept on that. And don't call each other names. Don't call you are lumpens and I am the real liberal Hindu. Don't do that.
I come to the next point, which you referred to very briefly. This whole debate of putting Hindutva and Hinduism one against another and saying that if you are a good Hindu, you can't be a Hindutva proponent and vice versa. It's a fairly recent political phenomenon. But do you not think, and this is a question for both of you, and I'll give both of you a chance to say that the people who have been proponents of so-called Hindutva have been the same since the past 96 years. It's a Sangh Parivar and the Sangh Parivar organizations which have been basically doing this. But the people who called themselves secular people before 2014 are now reinventing and rebranding themselves suddenly as proponents of Hinduism. And that is why everything that they said before that, and by saying that Hinduism is bad, you cannot have Hindu practices, it's an obscurantist and superstitious religion. Now they are the people who are suddenly discovering the greatness of Hinduism as a super inclusive, super open faith. And I'm not talking about you, Pavanji, because I know that your stand has been consistent in this. But I'm talking about the people who are suddenly making this artificial distinction between Hindutva and Hinduism. Do you not think that the earlier secularists have now morphed into, like Raktabijas, morphed into something else and calling themselves the proponents of Hinduism? And this is a question for both of you, actually.
I agree with you, Shefali, that something has changed in recent years. There was a time after 1947 where if you spoke of our ancient past, if you spoke of Hinduism as a religion, there was an attempt by an anglicized elite to automatically dub you as less than secular. In fact, in my book, The Great Hindu Civilization, I almost begin by quoting such a dialogue where a dear friend of mine, well-known, Gurcharan Das, said that I am going to be studying the Mahabharata and some of the other texts in ancient India. And a typical example of this deracinated, anglicized elite said, "Are you becoming Sanghi, my friend?" In other words, it was a very brittle secularism, where not knowing anything about religion was considered almost secular. I'm glad we moved away from that phase. That does not mean that even if we accept that we should, in fact, I believe, to be rooted in your culture, in your religious tradition, helps you to better understand your own country and its culture. I don't believe that if that has happened, the attempts to contest different interpretations of it must cease. People can have different interpretations of what that Hinduism or Hindutva should mean. And I think we are in the process of that debate. There are some things on which I am clear. I have written at length on Veer Savarkar in my book. And I believe that the powerful polemic he wrote at that time, he was still in Ratnagiri jail. He had spent 11 years plus in solitary confinement in the Andamans. He was upset about two things in particular, I believe. One was the Congress Party's support to the Khilafat movement. And secondly, the Congress Party or some members of the Congress Party's attempt to downplay the heinous Mopla riots. And he wrote this tract. But I really feel that a political party today, more than 70 years after the constitution has been adopted, should stop being under the time warp of Hindu Rashtra on the basis of Prithra Bhumi and Divya Bhumi. I don't believe so. It is one of the most spectacularly impractical idea in today's India, given the nature of our nation. I mean, if the Muslims were segregated in one geographical area, you could say this country will exclude them. They are spread across the country, as are the minorities. I mean, if 25% of Kerala is Muslim, equal numbers are in Bengal, in UP, in where 14% of Kerala, 12% of Tamil Nadu. They live cheek by jowl. We have been living like that for centuries. Even the Christian community, Shefali, only 2% or so is more than the combined population of Hungary and Greece. So as a nation, in conjunction, in accordance with the mandate of the Constitution, we must learn to live, coexist in harmony and with people of different faiths, respecting other faiths, always vigilant against injustice in the name of religion or attempts to appease one at the cost of the other, but essentially in coexistence.
So talking about injustice to the religion, do you personally believe, sir, that the temples at Mathura and Kashi, who were well documented to have been destroyed just as a sign of religious superiority, should they be reinstated? Is it correcting a wrong? Is it not correcting a wrong?
I am happy that the temple at Ayodhya has been built. I believe that the enlightened injunction on the part of the Supreme Court was that if in a country like ours, we continue to reopen the past in order to enhance the acrimonies of the present, it's a counterproductive cycle, ultimately for the goal of a multicultural, multi-religious and plural India. Mathura and Kashi, I have no doubt that the mosques were built by Aurangzeb in deliberate proximity to the temple, and
Proximity?
that proximity.
Proximity?
I don't know the historical
You go
facts,
to
Shivali.
Kashi, sir, you see half the wall of the temple still
No,
existing at the bottom of the
in
mosque.
Kashi, I can tell you that the actual Vishwanathji sanctum sanctorum was shifted in order to build that mosque. Now,
And what is your source for this?
shifted from its actual spot, so I am supporting you, Baba. I am saying that this happened in Kashi.
So you are saying that the original temple stood at the place where the mosque is?
I am saying this. I am adding a word of caution here that ultimately in any country you cannot erase history to the point of beginning afresh. There have been atrocities in fact, I have a chapter in my book on the Islamic conquest and the degree of destruction of Hindu artifacts, temples, and places of learning. And I said it cannot be pushed under the carpet. And we must acknowledge history in order to move on, rather than believe it never happened. But you and I must think as citizens. In this country, if we continue to unravel the past in order to settle scores today, where is this going to end?
Fair enough. I'll leave Ram Madhavji with this question, and I will also ask you that previous question. Do you think that the people who are bringing this artificial distinction between Hinduism and Hindutva are the same people who have morphed from the previous secularist, quote unquote, to now champions of Hinduism?
No, actually, after listening very carefully to Mr. Pavan Varma, I now am convinced they have not even morphed into anything. It's only a pretense. Same language, same articulation, which we found in Jawaharlal Nehru. Same anglicized whitewashing of history. When we said Pitrabhumi, this fatherland or motherland, we said it with a certain kind of respect. For you, it is dismissive. I mean, you can rewind the cassette. That is what I am saying, the very Anglicized elite's behavior. But why they are using this very deceptive articulation today? No, Hinduism is great. Their great-grandfather also used to do. He wrote books like Discourse of India, etc., in which he praised the culture. He talked about, even on the day of India's independence, Mr. Nehru's speech was, the long suppressed soul of a nation finds its manifestation. What was that long suppressed soul? Same deceptive language. So that deceptive language is again being deployed today. I'm sorry, this is a strong word, because since I'm a lumpen, I'm entitled to use the word deceptive. Let me say the same attitude in a different garb is continuing today for the only simple reason, very important reason I tell you, is the people of India today are mainstreamed into Hindu philosophical, cultural, spiritual idea. The Hindu spiritual, cultural, civilizational idea has become the mainstream of India. That's why everybody is shedding crocodile tears. Even those anglicized great wise intellectuals. But then the same arguments are brought back. No, how can you dig up history? We changed everything that the British had built in this country. We changed the names of the streets. We changed the names of many buildings in this country. Okay, one can have a genuine argument that should it be done in a very roughshod manner, or you do it in a manner that everybody appreciates it. Whether he is a Hindu or a Muslim or somebody, everybody appreciates it. Here I want to make a very important point. Mr. Pavan Varma is doing great injustice by saying that those who talk of Hindutva are excluding Christians or Muslims. When did any Hindutva leader ever say it? We say that all 1.3 billion people of this country belong to this one culture, one nation, one great history. Because one important reason is there. The Muslims are Christians of this country. Unlike Muslims are Christians in some of the Arab countries or the European countries, are not outsiders. They have not come from any other country. They are part and parcel of this country. They were born here, born to parents who are probably grandparents who are probably Hindu. So we consider them as an equal inheritor of this great culture and civilization. But my point is that Mr. Pavan Varma should not preach that Hinduism to our cultural respect to us. He should preach it to those who do not accept that their forefathers also belong to the same history or same civilization. We should be preaching them that, oh, please remember you belong to this culture. We don't do that. We reinterpret culture and say that, no, you Hindutva, you don't know, you are all lumpens. That is not the right interpretation.
Okay, one-line response, sir. One-line response, please.
I did not call you lumpen, so don't misquote me. Secondly, I am a little surprised at the level of vehemence that Mr. Ram Madhav brought into making this a personal matter. It just shows that there is not that great a tolerance to divergent opinion on your side.
No,
of the
you
spectrum.
call us
Okay,
lumpen, and
okay.
you call our MP lumpen,
Okay.
and you are very liberal.
I was calling-
You called him lumpen.
I was not calling you. I was saying that
You call him lumpen,
and I stay with
sorry,
tolerance.
Madhav ji,
We say you are
Ram
The
anglicized.
behavior
This
of
Madhav
No, you
ji.
can't.
without the
Ram
enforcement
Madhav ji,
of the law.
Ram Madhav ji.
Is lumpen.
So I am saying you are the
I'm sorry.
anglicization.
I'm saying it is
Yours is
lumpen.
anglicization.
I'm sorry, sir.
I
I'm
said you are
sorry. We have to
anglicized.
move to the question and answer session. There are 3 questions coming from the audience. The first one is, हिंदुत्व की बात को लोग सांप्रदायिक क्यों मानते हैं? You may take that.
हिंदुत्व की बात को सांप्रदायिकता नहीं मानते हैं जब तक उसके पीछे सोच और मंशा ये ना हो कि 2 संप्रदायों में, 2 धर्मों और मजहब में द्वेष, घृणा और हिंसा हो जाए। अगर ये मंशा है तो उसको हम सांप्रदायिक मानते हैं। और मैं समझता हूं इस तरह की सांप्रदायिकता हिंदुओं के निजी हित के खिलाफ है। कुछ लोग जो समझते हैं वो ठेकेदार हैं हिंदुइज्म के, वो अपने राजनीतिक फायदे के लिए इस पूरे विवाद को, डिबेट को, संवाद को कम्युनलाइज या सांप्रदायिक बना रहे हैं।
राम माधव जी, आपका जवाब।
नहीं, ऐसा है, ये सांप्रदायिक है कहने वाले लोगों की संख्या घटती जा रही है। यू मस्ट रिमेंबर, दे आर अ लूजिंग ब्रीड. Larger Indian society is appreciating the value of the arguments that we are making. We are saying precisely that very thing. Don't discriminate in the name of religion. Treat everybody as equals. Suddenly today, wise men have this idea that no, temple should be liberated. No, Ram Janmabhoomi is a genuine cause. It never occurred to them 10 years ago, 15 years ago when they were branding as communal. So this new dawn of wisdom is actually political. They now realize that their arguments are not gelling with people, so better to, hang on to Hinduism and keep selling that we are true Hindus, RSS wale are communal Hindus. This is the tactic that they are adopting. So I stand by the argument that Mr. Pavan Varma is making. Don't politicize Hinduism. You also don't do that.
Okay,
Nobody
next
should do
question. हिंदुत्व की बात ना करना तो अपनी पहचान से दूर जाना होगा. क्या कोई देश अपनी पहचान से दूर रहकर तरक्की कर सकता है?
हिंदू धर्म की पहचान और नास्तिक होने का भी आपको हक है. हिंदू धर्म में चार्वाक थे जो कहते थे वेदास झूठ है, वो भी हिंदू धर्म के हिस्सा थे. तो हिंदू धर्म में अगर आप कहते हैं कि मैं जन्मा हुआ हिंदू भी धार्मिक नहीं हूं, आपको उसकी स्वीकृति है. यही तो हमको और मजहबों से अलग बनाता है और इसको बचा के रखना है. परंतु हिंदू धर्म जानना आपको अपनी पहचान से, मेरे समझ से जोड़ता है. मैंने आदि शंकराचार्य पे किताब लिखी है, महाभारत पे लिखी है, कृष्णा पे लिखी है और अब ग्रेट हिंदू सिविलाइजेशन लिखी है. मुझे इससे मदद मिली है, पर मैं इसको अनिवार्य नहीं बनाना चाहता.
नहीं, बिल्कुल उसमें कोई आपत्ति नहीं. बट प्रॉब्लम क्या है, चार्वाक ने वेदों को प्रमाण मानने से इनकार कर दिया, वो भी हिंदू है. बट आप कहेंगे भाई बिंदी पहनना आवश्यक है तो आप लंपेन है. दिस डिबेट हैज द प्रॉब्लम. आई एम सेइंग, वी आर ऑल सेइंग द सेम थिंग. भाई जितना आजादी पहले भी हिंदू धर्म में विभिन्न विचारों की रही है, उतना आजादी आज भी रहना चाहिए. उस आजादी को हम असहन हो जाते, उस आजादी से हम कहते हैं कि ये इंटॉलरेंस है. तो तब तो फिर आचार्य को भी कहना चाहिए इंटॉलरेंस था, बुद्ध को भी कहना चाहिए इंटॉलरेंस था, या अंबेडकर ने कहा एनिहिलेशन ऑफ कास्ट, कास्ट को एनिहिलेट करना चाहिए, समाप्त नष्ट कर देना चाहिए. इंटॉलरेंस था क्या? दे आर ऑल व्यूज विच वी रिगार्डेड एज वेरी मच इंटीग्रल टू हिंदू सिविलाइजेशनल ईथॉस. भिन्ने भिन्ने पिंडे पिंडे मतिर भिन्न हमने कहा है. हाँ, don't resort to violence, in that we are all one. Don't resort to vandalism, in that we are all one. But expression of dissent, expression of views is what Hindutva is all about.
We are arguing for the same thing.
Absolutely. But problem क्या है? Problem क्या है?
I don't agree with the Bindi argument. I should not.
No, but don't tell us lumpen. I'm only saying इसको lumpen मत कहो.
आपको lumpen word से इतनी परेशानी क्यों हो गई? ये जो actions होते हैं हिंदुइज्म के नाम में,
आपको आंग्रेजी से बोलने से इतना दुख क्यों हो गया है?
So we have come to the conclusion, which is the core idea of this whole debate, that Hindutva and Hinduism are the same basically.
And both are liberal.
Yes. So we come to the last question, which is
your conclusion, but we can differ.
which is the last question. हिंदुत्व को मुद्दा बनाने वालों की मानसिकता क्या है? और इसमें I am assuming both sides. So हिंदुत्व को मुद्दा बनाने वालों की मानसिकता क्या है?
सत्य की खोज और इस देश को एक सभ्य समाज जो संविधान के अनुकूल चलता है, उसमें अगर हिंदुत्व के कुछ ऐसे किरदार हैं जो कुछ लोगों की समझ में हिंदू धर्म और हमारी बुनियादी मूल्यों के विपरीत है अपने प्रैक्टिस में, तो हम एक लोकतांत्रिक देश के हिस्सा होते हुए उन पर सवाल या प्रश्न उठा सकते हैं.
राम माधव जी.
नहीं, बिल्कुल जो तत्व इस उदार विचार जिसका मैं हिंदुत्व मानता हूं, उसका मैं हिंदुइज्म मानता हूं, उसको मैं भारतीयता मानता हूं, इंडियन कल्चर मानता हूं, उस उदार इंक्लूसिव सर्वसमावेशक विचार के खिलाफ होते हैं. उनके प्रति हम सबको सावधान रहना चाहिए, आवाज उठाना चाहिए. बट उसमें हम जो हमको सूट करता है वो करें, जो नहीं सूट करता है वो करें, ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए. एक हमें इस प्रकार के तत्व किसी भी प्रकार, किसी भी रूप में, किसी भी मजहब के रूप में, किसी भी संप्रदाय के रूप में उठना नहीं चाहिए. ये धारणा हमें रखना चाहिए. पर एक व्यापक मूवमेंट को जो इस देश की मुख्य धारा बनी है आज के दिन में, इस मुख्य धारा के प्रभाव के चलते कल तक सेकुलर थे, आज भी हिंदू की भाषा बोल रहे हैं। अब जिस एमपी की बात किए थे उनसे मैं एक्सपेक्ट करता था कि सेकुलरिज्म पर बड़ा ग्रंथ लिखते हैं, पर उन्होंने तो हिंदुइज्म पर लिख डाला है। क्यों? क्योंकि आज लिखना पड़ा है इस देश की समाज को। एमपी की बात सर,
आपके लिए ही नहीं लिखा मैंने।
बिल्कुल,
हो सकता है कि हमारी भी कोई
आपने सर, आपने सर,
मैंने ये माना
आपने सर, नहीं जिस एमपी की बात,
इसका इतना श्रेय मत लीजिए।
नहीं बिल्कुल नहीं, श्रेय तो पूरा आपका, श्रेय पूरा आपका है।
शांत शांत शांत,
को हिंदू धर्म और पढ़ना,
बिल्कुल पढ़ना चाहिए
शांत
सर, हमको तो आपसे ही पढ़ना चाहिए क्योंकि आपने इतने अच्छे तरह हिंदू धर्म समझाया है, और पढ़ लेंगे जरूर सर, आपका भी पढ़ेंगे, बाकी भी पढ़ेंगे, आपको भी हमारा थोड़ा पढ़ना चाहिए, बिना पढ़े सबको लंपन नहीं कहना चाहिए, हिंदुइज्म को समझ लेना चाहिए।
सोच समझ के वो एक्सप्रेशन यूज किया।
नहीं मैं भी सोच समझ के, मैंने सोच समझ कर कहना हूं, मैं भी आपको सोच समझ कर कहना हूं। आप कितने गार्ब में चलते हैं, कितने झूठे इसमें चलते हैं, इसके में कह रहा हूं। तो इसलिए सबको समझना चाहिए, जो हिंदुइज्म में भी कोई गलत कर रहा है उसका गलती को हमको उजागर करना चाहिए, पर किसी एक बड़े आंदोलन को किसी एक गलत धारणा में फंसाने का प्रयास करना, उसका मैं विरोध कर रहा हूं।
थैंक यू।
जो भी गलत हो रहा है उसको रोकना चाहिए।
Thank you, Ram Madhav ji. Thank you, Pavan Varma ji. It was a very enlightening discussion. One thing we can all agree, I think, and I think both of you are on the same page about this, that the Overton window in this country has permanently shifted to the Hindu side. That is why even people who were earlier called themselves secularist and who took great pride in demonizing Hindutva or Hinduism are now suddenly making this distinction between Hinduism and Hindutva. And hopefully we have found some middle ground and we have come to a conclusion that broadly we are talking about the same things, and that Hindutva and Hinduism are actually not that different. They are just two facets of the same ideology.
I can be Hindu and secular.
Thank you so much. Being Hindu is
you
being
can be secular only because you are
exactly.
Hindu.
Being Hindu is being secular. Thank you so much.
Kojo, 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 kojo.